Isabella Langley strutted into the courthouse like she was walking a runway, dressed in a bright fuchsia designer suit and glittering jewelry. She looked more ready for a lavish brunch than a courtroom appearance. Her oversized sunglasses perched on her head, and her stiletto heels echoed loudly as she made her way toward the courtroom doors. Isabella's expression was a mix of boredom and annoyance, as though this whole ordeal was nothing more than a minor inconvenience in her otherwise perfect life. "I can't believe I have to be here," she muttered to her assistant, who trailed behind her with a tiny dog in a matching designer bag. "All I did was drive a little fast. People act like I committed a crime or something." The assistant nodded nervously, clearly used to Isabella's dismissive attitude. The incident Isabella referred to was no small matter. A week earlier, she had been caught speeding through a quiet residential neighborhood in her sleek red sports car. She had narrowly avoided hitting a child crossing the street and caused a minor collision with another car. Instead of apologizing, Isabella had berated the other driver for being in her way. "Daddy will pay whatever they want," she had said flippantly, waving her manicured hand as though brushing the entire situation aside. Now, as she entered the courthouse, her confidence remained unshaken. "Why do I even have to show up?" she complained loudly. "He could have just sent someone to handle this." Her remarks drew the attention of others in the hallway. Some shook their heads, whispering about her arrogance, while others exchanged knowing looks. Isabella, however, either didn't notice or didn't care. She was too busy lamenting how long she might have to sit in court. As the doors to the courtroom opened, Isabella sauntered in, her heels clacking on the polished floor. The room was packed with people, many of whom turned to look at her as she entered. Some raised their eyebrows at her flashy outfit and loud demeanor, while others seemed visibly annoyed by her lack of respect for the solemn atmosphere. Isabella didn't care. She settled into a chair near the front, pulling out her phone and scrolling through social media. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered about the importance of behaving appropriately, but Isabella waved him off dismissively. "Relax," she whispered back. "Daddy's got this." She smirked to herself, already imagining the lavish lunch she would treat herself to after this ridiculous hearing was over. What Isabella didn't realize was that her actions had consequences far beyond what her father's money could fix. Isabella entered the courtroom 10 minutes late, her gum chewing loud and her giggles echoing as she glanced at her phone. The judge, Oliver Garrett, had already begun the session, and her tardiness interrupted his remarks. "Mississippi, please take a seat," Judge Garrett said firmly, his voice commanding and calm. His sharp gaze landed on Isabella, who seemed unfazed. Yeah, she muttered, popping her gum as she slid into her seat. Instead of sitting quietly, Isabella sprawled back in her chair, pulling out her phone again. Her lawyer whispered urgently for her to put it away, but she rolled her eyes before complying, making it clear she thought the entire situation was beneath her. Judge Garrett observed Isabella's behavior with growing disapproval. A tall, dignified man with decades of experience, he was known for his no-nonsense demeanor and commitment to justice. He had dealt with entitled defendants before, but Isabella's blatant disrespect was testing his patience. When the charges were read aloud, Isabella stifled a laugh, muttering something under her breath. When Judge Garrett asked if she had anything to say, she stood, smoothing her designer skirt. "Honestly, I don't even know why I'm here," she said with a smirk. "It's not like anyone got hurt. Can't we just write a check and call it a day?" The room fell silent. Gasps rippled through the audience. Isabella's lawyer buried his face in his hands, clearly mortified. Judge Garrett raised an eyebrow but remained calm. "Miss Langley, this is a court of law, not a place to flaunt your privilege. I suggest you take this seriously." Isabella didn't take the hint. "Oh, come on," she said with an exaggerated sigh. "Let's not act like this is a big deal. And honestly," she added, eyeing the judge, "shouldn't you understand the importance of knowing your place? Isn't that your job?" The subtle condescension in her tone was unmistakable, and the courtroom collectively held its breath. Judge Garrett's expression didn't change, but his tone grew colder. "Miss Langley," he said evenly, "you are dangerously close to making this worse for yourself." I suggest you sit down and remain silent while I deliberate. Isabella shrugged and flopped back into her seat with a huff, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Judge Garrett leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Isabella. "Miss Langley," he began, his voice calm yet commanding, "your actions have shown a blatant disregard for the law and a troubling lack of accountability. Your behavior here today only reinforces that." Isabella sat up straighter, a flicker of nervousness crossing her face. "Wait," she stammered. I said I was sorry, kind of." Judge Garrett didn't flinch. "Reckless driving is not a trivial matter. Miss Langley, it's a choice that endangered lives. Your attitude today demonstrates that you do not take these charges seriously." Isabella opened her mouth to respond, but Judge Garrett raised a hand, silencing her. "This court is here to deliver justice, not to cater to entitlement," he said firmly. "Justice cannot be bought." The courtroom erupted in murmurs as Judge Garrett delivered his sentence. "For your reckless driving, you are hereby fined $50,000, he began. "This amount is not only to cover the damages you caused, but also to serve as a deterrent for future behavior." Isabella's jaw dropped. $50,000? "Are you kidding me?" she blurted out. Judge Garrett ignored her outburst. "Furthermore, you will complete 300 hours of community service, focusing on road safety education. And finally," he said, his tone unyielding, "you will serve 6 months in county jail." Gasps filled the room. Isabella's eyes widened in disbelief. 6 months? Jail? "But I can't. My dad will." "Your father cannot buy your way out of this." "Miss Langley," Judge Garrett interrupted, "this sentence is not about punishment alone. It is about ensuring you learn the value of accountability and respect for the law." Isabella was escorted out of the courtroom, her once confident demeanor shattered. For the first time in her life, she realized she couldn't escape the consequences of her actions. Her time in jail was a rude awakening. At first, she complained about everything: the food, the accommodations, the guards. But as days turned into weeks, Isabella began to reflect. She listened to the stories of fellow inmates who had faced struggles she had never imagined. During her community service, she met families who had lost loved ones to reckless drivers. Their pain struck a chord, forcing Isabella to confront the impact of her actions. By the time Isabella's sentence ended, she was a changed woman, no longer defined by entitlement. She emerged with a new understanding of responsibility and humility. Judge Garrett's decision had sent a powerful message. Justice does not bend to wealth or privilege. It is a principle that applies equally to everyone, teaching Isabella and the world a lesson she would never forget.